Hello and welcome to the Auto Remarketing Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Overby, Senior Editor of Auto Remarketing, and joining us today is a familiar guest for many of our listeners and readers and conference attendees, and that's Jeremiah Wheeler, who is the president of DRN. You guys know him from, um, the many panel discussions he's led and participated on at Used Car Week and Auto Intel Summit, and he really is just a fountain of knowledge for us in the auto finance and repo space. And he is one of our first ever Used Car Week Hall of Fame inductees, and all that is much appreciated. But today we're actually not talking automotive. We're going to be talking about the new book that Jeremiah Wheeler released today, and that is The Unlikely Executive: From Dope and Despair to Leadership and Legacy. And today is actually its release date, July 15th. And we are fortunate to have Jeremiah here this morning and talk to us a little bit about the book. Jeremiah, great to see you, and congratulations on just kind of a momentous day for you, I imagine.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the partnership and the friendship over the last 10 plus years, I think probably 13 years or so, that we've been involved with each other in terms of partnership and Used Car Week and all the fun things that we've gotten to do. And you guys have been super helpful to our organization, and we deeply appreciate that. But yeah, today's a big day for me and my family. The book was really a culmination of multiple conversations that I've had over the years, talking with different people and telling my story. And it was really more about more about really the journey, right? That I've been on since my childhood. And I kind of told the story at a 30,000 foot level to a lot of different people over the years, and everyone's like, "Man, you need to write a book. You need to write a book." And so I heard that for a while, and I decided in August of 2023 to jump in and get go back to school and get my master's in business administration. And for some reason, I also decided about 4 or 5 months after that I was going to jump in and write this book at the same time. And so it was a little bit of a burdensome venture, to say the least, trying to do that and balance school at the same time. But it worked out. And so we just finished it about a month ago and went through and did a lot of the final reads and final edits and today's official release day. So I'm super excited about it.
Excellent. So take me back to August 2023. You started SMU for the MBA program, and then a few months later, you decide I'm going to put pen to paper. What was the light bulb moment? I assume, late 2023 into 2024. What was the light bulb moment to say, all right, after hearing all these people say write a book, this is what inspired. This is why I'm going to do it.
Well, I think it was me jumping into the MBA program
Yeah.
with both feet and taking that leap. I had talked about going back and getting my MBA for years. I had researched all these different programs in different schools, and it was kind of analysis paralysis, or paralysis by analysis. And so after going through that process over and over and over and never really pulling the trigger, I decided that it, and it was kind of funny because they offered an early admittance scholarship at SMU in Dallas, and I said, that's some motivation for me. It was a $5,000 scholarship, and so I said, I'm going to apply, and if I get in and I get in early and I get this scholarship, then I'm in. I'm going to do it. And so once I did that and pulled the trigger, then I was approached by Tom Freeling at the Freeling Agency out of Virginia. And, we talked for a little while about my story and writing a book and, the publication process and all the different things. And I think it was really just taking that leap into the MBA program that helped me kind of push myself a little bit and say, it's now or never. There's never been a better time than now. That was also August of 2023 was, you know, a time when we were shortly to become empty nesters, my wife and I. And so my youngest daughter went off to Ole Miss and started her freshman year in 24. And so, we were like, better time, no better time than now. And so that was really it. I think that was kind of what pushed me over the edge. And there are some time periods when I wish that I probably wouldn't have done them together because it was a lot of work and a lot of sleepless nights. But that drive for me from my home, west of Fort Worth over to Dallas to school on the weekends, on Friday and Saturdays, helped me record a lot of audio for the book, and that really helped me because I'm more of a storyteller verbally than I am a writer. And when I teamed up with Tom Freeling and the Freeling Agency, he just said, "Look, we need you to be a storyteller. We need you to tell us the story from front to back." And I had told it so many times, but then I added more detail, and I was able to just do those recordings, and that really helped me a lot.
So what was that process like? I mean, the writing process, you get in your car and drive, to make your way into Dallas on the weekends, and I assume you're recording on your phone. And how what was the process of organizing what you want to talk about to then putting what you record into the written word? How did that all work out?
Well, it was really for me, it was telling the story from the earliest childhood memories all the way through. And it was focused really on my personal journey, both from a truly personal perspective into um, the work life, right? When I learned about money and I learned about work and hard work and work ethic and what money would do for you as a very young child, at 12 years old. And so it was really starting from there and just telling the story, right? Just as you would start telling the story from your earliest childhood memories and the things that were most impactful to you, both negative and positive. And really, it was, recording after recording after recording. It was hours and hours and hours of recording, and then turn those in, and then you get back written manuscript and you read it and reread it and redline it and go through and proof it and change things and add, 100 comments and add whole sections. And it's like, oh, I forgot about this. Let me go back and add that. And so it was like, for me, not being a writer per se, but having all of these thoughts that I can record. It's the same thing that when my marketing team comes to me and says, "Hey, we have this conference coming up and we want to know, do you want to write a blog about it?" I say, "Yeah, we can write a blog, but you're going to need to write it. I will tell you the story to write. And then I would prefer you guys go actually pin it and then let me reread it and edit it, make sure that it aligns with the story that I want to tell." I've just always been better at that. I can't sit down with a blank piece of paper and start from scratch. It takes me a little while. But if I record something and then I turn around and I can listen to that recording and I can start typing from there if I needed to. But that's never been a strong suit. So that process took roughly a year and a half. before we started getting really solid manuscript. And, I tell people too, they ask me what is the book about? And is it, and I said, well, it will be an easy read. It's only 144 pages. Um, and, I glossed over some things that I thought were not as important for the purpose of the book, because, the other thing is purpose and what I want people to get out of it and take away from it. Obviously, my story is really important to me, and every time I've told it, people say, that's, you have a unique story. How that transitions and transfers into leadership and leading a team and being, a true team player and being empathetic and all of those things. I wanted to try to put all of that together into one single book and tell the story of struggle and addiction and finding sobriety and then leading with purpose. And that was really my biggest goal.
You describe your story as both a cautionary tale and a roadmap for transformation. How do you see those two things coexisting, either for yourself or just for anyone who's reading the book?
Well, the cautionary tale side of it is really, you have to be aware of your surroundings, not necessarily, the people that you surround yourself with. I mean, we've all read leadership books that say surround yourself with people smarter than you, surround yourself with people that are going to hold you accountable and keep you driving in the right direction. The cautionary tale side of it for me that I'm trying to get across to others, because I not only did I make these mistakes, but I've also seen other people falling into these ruts and making these mistakes, is be cautious of who you become because of what you think you need to do or who you need to be. It can quickly deter you from your true purpose in leadership and your true purpose in success and your true purpose in leading teams of people towards a goal. If you become people pleasers, to not saying that people don't matter, but you're redirecting yourself. So that caution is like, hey, look in the mirror every day and be accountable to yourself for, am I being the real me? Do I have a mask on? Am I leading by example in the wrong direction? Or am I being true to everything that I truly believe? And I think that if you allow yourself to continue to be detoured on these, false paths, if you will, trying to please other people and be everything to everybody, it does, it becomes your identity to some degree, and then you begin to lie to yourself and you begin to believe those lies, and then it's hard to come back from that, because you believe so strongly of, this is what I need to do to be successful, and this is what I need to do, and this is how I should lead, because not everyone's leadership style is yours. The one thing that I've told young individuals coming into the workforce and the interns that we've hired is, just be authentic. And if the authenticity doesn't work for you in the organization that you're in, you're probably in the wrong organization. Um, you have to be true and authentic to yourself. So that's really the cautionary tale side. Um, and then the other side is, you know, transforming yourself into that leader that you look up to, and the people that you look up to, is really accountability, the trust factor of you trusting yourself and having people trust you, building that trust with other people on your team, and then making sure that you're holding yourself daily accountable, right? Every day you wake up and you say, I'm going to be accountable to the people around me. I'm going to be accountable to myself. And I'm not going to allow myself to be detoured. And that just develops over time, and that leadership through action and accountability, I think, has a huge effect on people, whether you immediately see it or whether anybody tells you outright. Um, you know, it absolutely helps.
The tagline of the book, in the on the Amazon site, what if your greatest failures could become your greatest qualifications for leadership? How has that applied to your own experience? I mean, what are some of the things that you would consider failures that are now, you know, your qualifications?
Oh, that's a tough question, but it's a really good question. The I think the biggest failure that I kind of fall back on is taking my eye off the wheel, and specifically related to my family
Mhm.
and my home life. And whether people know it or not, that foundational element of who we are is the most important and the most vital piece of everything. Having a good support system and a good foundation and that team of family around you allows you and enables you to do everything else in life. And I think one of the biggest failures for me was taking my eye off the ball, taking my eye off my family, and focusing so hard on being successful in the business world and in everyone else's eyes, right? And allowing that temporary verbal acknowledgement of success to be enough for me. And that was, middle to, probably between 2013 and 2016 was probably those most critical years of me feeling like I made it, and I'm successful. And it's like if you took out a book and a lot of books, it's like, what is success? Well, success is nice things and having, a title and making a lot of money, and you chase the wrong things and you allow that to become your identity, and the whole time you're selling your family out and all the people around you that matter because you're just hyper focused on being successful. And so that failure almost cost me everything. It almost cost me my family, and being focused on that and covering up the hole, if you will. Every addict out there always talks about we have a hole that we're trying to figure out how to fill. And it's typically you're looking for happiness and you're looking for, something that you'll never find in a bottle or in a drug or anything else. And, you know, running 180 miles an hour all day, every day, all week, every week, being gone 4 or 5 days a week. And my wife used to tell me when I got home on Thursday or Friday or whatever, she would say, those people get the best of you and we get the leftovers. And, that hurt a lot. But it was absolutely true. And, early on in my professional career, when I was climbing that success ladder, I was very defensive about that. And I disagreed wholeheartedly because I was doing this for them, right? And that whole process of like trying to balance that, I was too far over on this side of the work side, right? And so that failure really was massive. Um, and it cost me not just in the personal side. And I had to rebuild all that over the last almost 7 years and work really, really hard to rebuild that trust and accountability and all the things that I had kind of abandoned to some degree. And the the other thing I would say is, it cost me professionally because it set me back years in my leadership journey. It set me back financially because I took my eye off the ball in terms of equity, in terms of position in the organization, because I'd kind of settled for where I was and I was focused on customers and I was focused on the people outside of the organization. So not only did my personal family suffer, but my work family suffered too. And so, um, and when you go through growing a company and then having an exit and an acquisition happen, if you've taken your eye off the ball, it could cost you a lot of money, right? If you're not fighting for that equity and you're not fighting for that position of what you're delivering to the organization. It's not that my workload suffered. It's not that my work results suffered. They were fine. But me taking my eye off of my personal accountability to the company in terms of what I'm worth and getting what I'm worth, that cost me. And so I took that back as a life lesson of this is, two major life lessons and mistakes that I will absolutely never make again in terms of having that clarity to recognize it if it ever comes about.
Well, the subtitle of the book is From Dope and Despair to Leadership and Legacy. That's not a overnight process. It's an evolution. It's a book. It's a story book, right? But what was the turning point for you? Do you identify a turning point where you know, where things started to shift?
Well, early on, are you asking like where things started to shift from dope and despair to legacy and leadership,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
in
Yeah.
yeah. Um, it was September 2nd, 2018. And I had a very regimented process, right? I was like on the road all the time. I would come home, like my wife said, and it'd be just leftovers because I was running so hard. Um, but it was an ultimatum of we're done getting the leftovers. We're done being, just here waiting for you and hoping that when you come in today that you're going to be who we're waiting for and not the other person, right? That's irritable, that, isn't happy to be here because, probably because, I'm not able to get stoned or I'm not drinking or whatever. It was just always like this, it was always just this alternative personality, right? That came in the door. And so it was the ultimatum. It was like, we're done. And at the time, I had a corporate apartment in Fort Worth. And so we had actually moved back to Mississippi. We lived in Texas from 2013 until 2017. And my wife said, I can't do this anymore. We were raising my brother's two kids at the time too. So we had four kids, our two daughters, and then two nephews. And we were raising them too. And she said, I can't do all this by myself. I've got to move back home to be closer to my family so that I can get some support. Um, because obviously I wasn't supporting because I was too busy with work and too busy with, clients and trade shows and everything else. And to some degree, I stayed busy, as a part of my way to get away. But yeah, it was just that ultimatum. She said, we're done. You need to go. And so, I packed a bag and drove back to Texas, and I lived there for uh, a month by myself. And, part of me when I got there was like, okay, now I'm free. Now I don't have all these other responsibilities. I can do whatever I want. And I lived like that for a week or so. And I was, struggling with that. You're not making the right decision. You're turning into your father. Um, all the things that I hated about my dad, I was turning into. And so I decided on September 12th, 2018, that that was the last day that I would ever drink, smoke, um, all the bad things, bad habits that I'd ever done. I was done. And I went and checked myself into an outpatient rehab program. And I did 30 days of that, 4 hours a day after work. So it was like 5 to 9 p.m. every day. And unpacked all the things over the years that, that I wrote about in the book. Um, all of that childhood trauma and the generational curses and all those things that I was getting ready to pass down to my kids if I didn't change. And that program really helped me. But most importantly, the ultimatum helped. Her basically saying, "You got to go because this is not what I signed up for." And so that was the turning point. And then after that program, I came out with a different view, a different way to cope. I learned to identify the triggers that caused me to turn to a coping mechanism. I worked on changing my coping mechanisms, but most importantly, I think I changed the way that I think. Um, and it was a church sermon preached by Pastor Craig Groeschel at Life Church. And I was attending Life Church in Fort Worth at the time with my wife and them because they had come back in October. They had come back over to Texas to try to make it work. And I was attending that service, and he was preaching about the neural pathways in your brain and how important they are to basically have positive thinking, because you change your thinking, you change your life. And he actually, after that sermon, a while later, he wrote a book on it. Um, and he talks about reframing your thoughts. And, because the first thought I would think every day when I woke up was, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to work. I don't, you go down this rabbit hole of just these little bitty negative thoughts. And then that dictates your rest of your day. And then it dictates your week. And that turns into your month. And that turns into your year. And you realize I'm a pretty negative person. Um, and so that's what I had to work on, was reframing and changing, stopping those negative thoughts as soon as they entered my mind and saying, you know what? I've been blessed. I'm grateful. I've got my family back. I have my health. I did not lose everything like a lot of people do. I'm very, very fortunate. And I need to focus on turning my story into something that can help other people, with that cautionary tale of, this is the advice and this is how you fix it and this is where you need to go in life. And so that's where it all kind of started. And then it turned into where we are today.
Well, one of the things that I've heard you talk about that really resonated with me is you were on a panel discussion at our Auto Intel Summit a couple years ago, and you talked about that pre sobriety you had one identity, and you thought getting sober changes that identity, and your wife told you something along the lines of, no, that's not your identity. you know you have an identity that's not you know related to partying or anything like that. What have you discovered is your identity through this process?
Well, like she said, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
The person that she signed up for was a soft-hearted, genuine, caring, loving, funny, fun person, right? And the person that I'd become was so hyper focused on everything else while coping with all the drugs and alcohol, was not that person. You know, I was turning to turning into this hardened, heartless, not very caring um, person that said hurtful things out of anger because of just, I was mad that people, her and a couple of other people would challenge me, the person that came from nothing and that it turned myself into a success. Like, I was right and they were wrong. And so that whole process of, being turning into a different person. And it's these little bitty lies and justifications for us telling ourselves why we need that drink after work or why we need that drink before a social hour or why we need to smoke that because it relaxes us or because it helps my anxiety or, all of those little things. We believe them inherently, and especially when any type of medical provider is involved. The same thing that you see today going on with the upcoming marijuana epidemic that's sweeping our nation, it will absolutely become the next epidemic. And it's because it's so potent, so addictive, so much stronger than anything back in the day. Um, and medical providers and people that we trust are pushing this on everybody. But if you go back in history and look at time over, the last 70 years, they did the same thing with amphetamines, with opioids, with tobacco and alcohol. And all of those things became epidemics. So, you know, we can't always put our trust in those things. And, leading back to where I was going with that statement was once I got rid of all those things and I changed the way that I thought, the level of clarity, both mentally and physically, and how good I felt, how much better thinking I was doing on how much better I was professionally at work all day, every day, because I didn't have all those substances clouding my mind. It was just like, wow. I never, ever in a million years thought that I could live in this amount of clarity. And so happiness was a heck of a lot easier to find when you have ultimate clarity and you can focus on your family, you can focus on your team, you can focus on all these things and have true intentional focus, have true intentional empathy, have, that true connection with people that isn't a facade because you're stoned or a facade because you're buzzed because you've been drinking a little bit. Like connections matter. And, a lot of people feel connections on a much deeper level than other people. And they gravitate towards those people that they think feels what they feel. And so I would say I've had the best connections in my personal professional career and trying to truly lead with purpose is has been my goal and with authenticity.
Well, I know that most people listening to this are going to be people in the auto industry, but um, who should read this book? Who is kind of the target audience?
Man, that's a great question. Um, I always go back to, where I started making mistakes. And it started really early in I'm not even, I'm not going to call it a career because I was a teenager. Um, so fatherless homes, boys and girls in fatherless homes, I think they're a great target for this book. Um, Probably later teenage years. however, you have to approach it with an open mind, and that's hard to do when you're a teenager and you don't have a father in your home, or maybe you don't have a mother. One of those parents is bailed on you. So you have a lot of resentment and a lot of anger and a lot of things that you're dealing with. But I would say as early as, 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, when you're getting out into the world, all the way up to, you know, unlimited age, really. That's kind of the group that I would say that needs to read this book. Um, the other really important target segment would be people that are building their professional careers in an environment that's very, very much focused on social networking. And so, like our industry, obviously, we do a lot of social networking events, and we find ourselves in Las Vegas a lot and other places that have a lot of what I would consider not so good things to do as entertainment. And so you have to be careful, right, what you allow yourself to fall into. And that would really be it. That would be the audience. And so I'm really trying to get that message across to those people, that the kids that are coming up in broken homes, to say you have a chance. You're not, you're not who other people say you are. You have every opportunity in the world to be who you want to be. You have to have relentless focus, relentless execution. You got to be very disciplined, and not allow others to drag you in the wrong direction. And so, and then with the professional career people, it's just like, don't go down those paths. Don't focus on drinking until you don't know your name. And then you got to be at the conference the next morning at breakfast, and then you feel like crap and you're not your best self. And, that vicious cycle that we put ourselves through. And I did it for years. And you don't really realize it's happening until sometimes it's either too late, or you wake up and just go, why am I doing this? I have a hangover the 3 days that I'm here, and, you know, I don't have meaningful conversations. Hell, I can't remember half of them after 10:30 p.m. And so, yeah, so that's it. I mean, it's a wide audience for sure.
For sure. I think, um, yeah, it can be applicable to people who are maybe quote at risk, but also people who are in the midst of it, or people who have already gone through that and are looking back at their journey and maybe can find some common ground with you. Well, tell me. So, kind of looking forward, where can where can folks find the book? Are you doing any events as part of this, bringing it to conferences, book signings, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the book can be found on Amazon. That's the
Okay.
easiest and best place to get it. It was released today, but they opened it up, I think, 4 days ago or so for pre-orders. So they started shipping today. As far as like the future related specifically to the book, my goal is to be available for people that want to talk, for people that need help, or that need help identifying, am I on the right path? Do I, help me watch out for pitfalls? I've worked with other individuals in recovery, and helping them get to that point of working through the steps and getting on a good sobriety path. So I say that to say, if the opportunity comes up for some speaking opportunities related to this topic, then I'm absolutely going to jump on those. Book signings, I'm happy to do those. I've never really been someone that just wants to be in the spotlight per se, but I also realize that I can't really tell my story and lead with purpose without jumping out there and being in front of people. And so if we need to do a book signing, I'm happy to do that. Unfortunately, I will not be at Used Car Week this year because my oldest daughter's getting married. And
Congratulations.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
thank you. So I've been given strict instructions. I cannot travel that week. um, and so I will be home helping, do all the things that need to be done to get that prepped and ready to roll on that Saturday. But at other events, I've had a couple of conversations with other conference leaders that have said that they want to try to bring the book into the conference and give away to attendees and different things like that, and maybe eventually have some keynote session spots available. So it's really just how do I condense it down and tell the story in the right manner that helps the most people, and that's really my goal with the book.
Well, last question before I let you go here. Now that it's out in the world, um, what's the feeling like for you today?
I don't, it's pretty surreal, I guess. It's something that I never thought that I would do or that I could do, and it goes back to some of those little lies that we tell ourselves throughout our life and our career that you're not enough, you'll never make it, you'll never do this, those negative thoughts. And so, 10 years ago, if you would have asked me, would I be exactly where I am, and have graduated with my MBA and written a book all at the same time, no way, right? And so I think the feeling is, I have a massive feeling of gratitude, and and I would say a less feeling of accomplishment. I mean, I don't there again, I don't see myself as anything special. It just really, I'm appreciative for the opportunity. I'm appreciative that I have a family that supports me and has stood beside me and behind me and pushed me. And my wife has absolutely been the champion there for years and years. She saw the potential long before I ever did, and she pushed me to never let me settle for less. And so that's definitely something that I get to, focus on and kind of dwell on with this whole release in the book. And when I reread it, I've read it probably 10 or 15 times already, just proofing it. But being able to sit down and actually hold the book in my hand and open it and read it for the first time will be something that I'll definitely cherish for a long time.
Absolutely. Well, Jeremiah, congratulations on all of this, and I'm excited to read it. And others, be sure to go to the Amazon and look for The Unlikely Executive by Jeremiah Wheeler. Jeremiah, thanks for joining us today. Always great to talk with you, and especially nice to celebrate something like this with you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it and look forward to many more conversations over the years and many more opportunities to hopefully step out front and help others that are struggling.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you for your time and insights as always, and that'll do it for today's episode of the Auto Remarketing Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Overby. Thanks for listening.